Linda, it's been such a privilege to work with you on this module and to really be able to actually introduce and launch these incredible modules. I'm so eager to really watch them. But let's talk a little bit about you now, and we'd love to hear about your journey. At SWB, we often say that the nonprofit journey is a way to actually start on your board service. You did that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that journey?
Sure. Thanks, Sue. I would say that just to step back, I had no idea I would, achieve the professional success or be serving on boards. It wasn't something I understood at 20 or even 30. It just kind of grew out of my interests and me choosing what I wanted to do. I went after business school to Morgan Stanley, and I'm an athlete, and I've captained many teams, a collegiate athlete at Princeton. And I realized that if I look back on my career, I've always been interested in the team I joined and then how team dynamics work. That's always been a core part of my personal interest and professional success. So when I was at Morgan Stanley, I was, doing well in the capital markets area, and a colleague of mine tapped me on the shoulder, and her husband was on the board at Choate, a prep school that I went to. I hadn't been stayed that close to it. I hadn't been serving in any volunteer capacity. And he said, Linda, I'd really like you to interview to serve on the Choate board. It was a huge opportunity. I just point out that was a network, right? It was my professional reputation that led somebody more senior than me to recommend her husband to consider that. And I jumped at it quickly, and it was a huge building block, not only for my career, but also for my understanding of board work and service. I went on to chair multiple committees, finance, trusteeship, and I was serving with, some of the top finance people in the world. And I got, I felt like I was in a room a little bit above my head. And then I found out that I operated very fastly with those people. So it also, as a woman, boosted my confidence. And it was around something I was passionate about and a community I was really committed to. So I ended up ultimately being the vice chair of that board. I had a chaired trusteeship, and trusteeship, we rewrote kind of the bylaws and, how you think about board service. And that ended up being foundational for work that I have done since then in for-profit and nonprofit situations. So I really got trained in how to think about, board stewardship, so to speak. I then worked at Morgan Stanley and was promoted into, management committee and executive committee rooms. And I must say, it was my experience from that board that made me really comfortable walking into those rooms for the first time and understanding how to operate in those rooms, even though they weren't external boards, they were more internal boards working with your peers. My first for-profit board was MSCI. It was a company that I was a chair of at Morgan Stanley that we IPO'd. My boss at the time, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, John Mack, decided to change the firm rules. And when we IPO'd it, allowed me to be the first lead director. And then because independence was important once you're public, to remain on that board. So again, somebody doing something for me based on my reputation and network. I've served on that board since 2005. I've chaired pretty much every committee. I now chair Nom and Gov. We've been through lots of ups and downs. We were an IPO that had an activist on the board. We've had business crises. We went through 2008, 9. We've gone through COVID. It's been an amazing experience with a company that's, done kind of moved only one direction and has done super well, but only because of the agility and the work between the board and the management team. And it actually is the foundation of a lot of the thinking that I've done on the leading edge stewardship work that we've written about, both personal and professional. And many of those insights come from, tough times. I had a number of other for-profit opportunities that came my way, but back to kind of choosing and being chosen. One really hit me. Again, it was somebody that I really trusted who asked me if I would serve in a transformational situation with CSX, a Class 1 railroad. A new CEO was being brought in. His name was Hunter Harrison, and he's the Michael Jordan of the railroad industry, having transform many of the Canadian railroads, and the US railroads had not been transformed yet. And that was going to be not so fun, but it was going to lead to something very important, an industry that's been critical to the foundations of our economy. And the people who asked me to get involved with it and that opportunity just seemed really exciting to me and up my alley. It's been a terrific experience. I now chair Nom and Gov there. We too are a really high performing board. We had our CEO die suddenly on us, which was, again, you know, you never know when crisis is going to strike. How does the board respond? We brought in a new CEO recently from outside the industry, which again was kind of counter-conventional. He's done an amazing job. So much fun and challenge working with others and the management team in the boardroom to try to really create value. Along the way, I've chaired a nonprofit that focuses on literacy in underserved economies around the world. It's called Pencils of Promise. Again, brought to bear many of my experiences. I've worked on for and as an executive leader in other nonprofits as well as on the board. So I really like the balance that I have. I also am on a private equity entity. It's a healthcare company. One of my expertise is talent, culture, compensation. And I was brought in there again from a friend, actually a Stanford Business School classmate, who we've always really enjoyed each other's company, hadn't worked together on anything, and started to brainstorm what could we serve on together. So all of my experiences have come through my professional and personal networks, not through headhunters, though I do support the use of headhunters and search firms. They can open doors, but they really work for the company and the board. They don't really work for you, but it's an important network to cultivate as well. But if you're brought into a boardroom based on personal knowledge, it just makes it much easier for the board and the CEO to make that decision.
Tell us a little bit more as to how you and Mayrie Clark came to think about leading edge stewardship, since I know you were the primary authors of this and you had somebody else that inspired you too. Can you give us a little bit of background around that?
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, so I mean, I think for Mary and I, leading edge stewardship really grew out of our many years of experience in markets. We both believe in capital markets. We both believe in stewardship and leadership, and know that the boardroom journey is a little different. I didn't share earlier, but the other reason I'm kind of good at teams and care about teams is I'm an identical twin. And my twin and I, as Mayrie loves to say, like worked together on everything. So actually, Barbara and I spent a lot of time talking about this topic. She chairs a nonprofit board. You know, what does leading edge stewardship mean in nonprofit rooms as well as for-profit? And Barbara Hammond actually came up with the idea for the rubric, which we think is really unique and a terrific tool. So a shout out to Barb as well. But you know, as Mary and I worked with other women on Stanford Women on boards, we were all confronting the same thing. What makes us effective, and when are we challenged, and how do we respond to that? And we just felt it was a critical time, given everything going on in the world, to get clear and write down our own thoughts. And it has been a lot of work, but we are the co-authors, but a lot of people were involved, and their intellectual capital was involved, and their personal experiences were involved. And our hope is that we can use it not just in boardrooms of Stanford affiliated people, but around the world. And it's a critical time now for people to be thinking and talking about this. And we feel like we've kind of hit the zeitgeist. It's gotten a lot of positive reception, and it's a tool that you can use and reflect on for your very specific board situation. Hopefully you can create your own work to carry it on. So thanks again, Sue, for that question.
And I have to say, I've been the beneficiary of it, and I'm very privileged to have been able to use it. And I really encourage folks to get to learn a bit more from it as you go through your board journey. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Sue.